Hello guys, welcome back to Lines of Battle, and today we are looking at the core of all battles, of all armies, infantry. And I have chosen this battle replay for this intro for a very particular reason. Now, I will not analyze this game, however, you can see how while both of these players mainly rely on line infantries. One of them, being the blue, has light infantries to aid their fellow brothers, while red has guard units. Which unit is the better? What are they really all about? Now let's just go over to this test map and look at the individual units straight ahead. Obviously we have the standard line infantry, which has been in the game for the longest time. Now the closest unit that we can get to line infantries are the light infantries, which basically the same, except that they have a little bit of a larger like fire angle or whatever, plus they actually deal a little bit more damage on the range. And so we also have the guard units. Now the guards are pretty strong. They fall short to the light infantry in basically only in the ranged fire damage, but in everything else they are better than both the light or the line infantry, actually the same way around. So this is the line infantry, this is the light infantry. So yeah, the guard is better than both of them. Plus it has the most amount of organization among all the infantries, dubbed by an incredible melee damage, melee resistance and charge resistance. Now it may not be as fast as the light infantry, but it is pretty decisive when used correctly. And of course we have the militia, which no one really likes to use. Just look at their low org number. I mean, it's ridiculous. They also have the lowest amount of damage, defense, everything. They don't even move that fast. So yeah, forget about using militias unless you really couldn't spend your budget on anything else. But even then, don't use more than one militias, because at that point you may as well just buy like one line infantries, which would probably be better. Now I have already talked about their implementations in a bunch of previous videos, but so I will go over some of them plus also add some other ones. But definitely check some more videos if you want to really master the craft of battle. Now first of all we have something very standard called the garrisoning. Now the idea is to defend your cannons by always having some infantry nearby, and once the enemy cavalry wants to take their chance and rush straight at you, you are meant to go in with your infantry, intercepting the enemy, and then for good measure also work your artillery with some ranged damage. It might be tricky to learn the exact timing when you are a beginner, but eventually it becomes a very useful skill to implement. Second of all, let's look at some terrain management. Now obviously we are staying in the basics because I have done a whole video on terrain. So for now, let's just say that when picking the terrain, you should always consider two things: the materialistic composition of your units and the enemy units, and possible size of battle. Now whenever you have the stronger unit, by stronger I mean you have more melee damage, then it is better to fight the enemy in areas where melee damage is favored to range damage. For example, over here the forest obviously reduces the range damage as well as the town does, thus making melee more favorable. Now guards are absolute tanks. In fact, the guards deal 41 melee damage, while the line infantry only deals 37. Now effectively the guards infantry will just slowly wear them down in a couple turns. And whenever you don't have a melee advantage, so for example the light and line infantries both deal the same melee damage, you want to rely on some other advantages. So for example, the reason why I picked the planes for the light infantry is because they have a bit stronger range damage. And so just as with the guards, you want to utilize on your main advantage. So whenever this enemy unit comes rushing at you, now what you could do, instead of just confronting them straight head on, you could actually do some fallback and shoot them while they advance towards you. You want to maintain a distance, because as long as you don't get into melee, you are going to have an advantage. And even if you just delay the combat for a little bit of a time, the enemy unit will already have less HP, less org, and then you can commit to a fight if you want to, because you would probably win that fight. In fact, actually the light infantry has a little bit more org by default. So as you can see, they have 165, while the regular infantry, the line infantry, only has 150. So yeah, you could also just like charge in straight head on, but you are not forced to. In fact, you will definitely take less casualties if you delay the fight for a bit longer and utilize on your long-term advantages. Now let's quickly head over to this part of the battle site, and now we are getting into some intermediate stuff. As you can see, this time both players have the same composition. Their only difference is the deployment. Now look at blue. Blue could be you, because a lot of players don't really change up the ordering of their troops, and they just like go by the default ordering of the line. So essentially all of their good units are on the flanks, which isn't bad on its own, but whenever you're facing a skilled enemy, he will try to use it against you. So right now, red created some asymmetry by first of all deploying their strength on the left flank, plus on top of it all, he didn't actually put them on the far left, he actually put them closer to the center. Asymmetric deployment and warfare is absolutely essential in professional games, and they are also quite dominant in intermediate games as well. Now if both players were to play good right now, then first of all they would all want to advance with their strongest core of infantry, but also they would want to delay with their weaker counterparts. And so essentially, they will just try to avoid conflict wherever they are weaker and try to create conflict wherever they are stronger. Now if something like this happens wherever they just both avoid the battle, then you have a stalemate for a bit longer, and at the end the battle will be decided on something else. However, if one of the players goes ahead with the push but the enemy just stays in place, then I'm sorry, but you are going to get cooked. That is the most likely outcome here. So keep your eyes on asymmetric deployment, and if you want to learn more about tactics, then I have a whole different video about just the tactics itself. But for now, let's just move on to another tactical position. Once again, same amount of units, but while blue goes for a OG tight formation, red picked up a much more loose formation like so. Now loose formation and tight formation both have their pros and cons, but what you have to see here is that the river invalidates one of the options. Now red's units are more resistant to ranged attacks such as infantry fire from afar, etc, etc, because of course they are further away, and so essentially the enemy could only hope to hit only one unit at one time. However, if you are in a tight position, then the enemy could just do something like this. As you can see, they have perfect sight on these two units. They just make a fire order like so, and you know, because of game mechanics, both of these units take full damage. So yeah, it ain't pretty. Now there is a way for the tight formation to counter, and that would be to just charge down these isolated units over here. Like so, and maybe like over there as well. However, the reason why it just doesn't work in this position is the river itself, as previously mentioned. Because to cross the river, it would take probably a turn for you, and while you are in the river, you are also stupidly exposed to enemy fire. Like the water terrain modifier itself gives you reduced resistance to enemy damage. So yeah, it's a mess, don't do it. Now let's go over and check out one final important thing about responding to enemy cavalry. Now I want you to not be afraid of cavalries themselves whenever they are engaged in a long-term fight, because on the long run you should be able to outlast pretty much any of the cavalry units, basically with only just a light infantry. Well, as long as you are fully orc when the engagement begins, and as long as they stay committed. However, any decent cavalry player will go for some hit and run tactics whenever they just try to deal a big charge damage on you and then quickly disappear. That can be devastating, so try to avoid getting hit by cavalry like that. However, a fun fact that not a lot of people know is that infantries also deal charge damage. And you know, to deal charge damage, you basically only have to move towards a target for at least half a turn. And also, funnily enough, I bet only a few of you know about this, but artilleries also have charge damage. But it's like ridiculous because you would never use them to like charge at enemy units. In fact, the canister damage itself is way more useful. And so this has been a quick recap on infantry management, infantry positionings, infantry tactics, etc. You have to consider that the infantry is going to be the body of your army, but the arms are going to be the cavalry and the artillery. Well, at least most of the time. And so if you want to learn more about how to use cavalry, artillery properly, or just to deploy tactics, then definitely look for some more videos on this channel.